Welcome to this webinar. It's being brought to you by The Leap. They're an arts and culture organisation that's doing things differently. They work with communities and they seek to build confidence and skills through a range of routes. Some of them are financial, but also they offer non-financial support. And they're all about developing community-led culture. This webinar is part of a series of tools and resources that's going to help LEAP award winners and partners get their ideas, their projects, organisations, or even creative businesses off the ground. And today we're looking at business model canvas and business planning tools. So I hope you find this of interest. So first of all, how are you going to make the most of this session and why might it be important to you? So we're hoping that you'll be able to bring these practical tools into your plans and ideas, and these will help make your ideas a reality. They're going to help you communicate your ideas with others because you'll have put those plans down on paper, or you'll have started to think things through in a little bit more depth. And we hope that we'll take the fear and the complexity out of the business planning process. And what we're going to cover shortly are introducing you to some business planning methods. We're going to look at some tools that help you analyse and assess your proposition or your idea or a longer term venture. And we're going to look at these tools and practice doing that business planning at a stage that works for you, because you have to change the way you do things to make it meaningful and to not overwhelm yourself. So we've got lots of ranges of options for you to choose from here today. So I always say business plan, schmizness plan. That's not to say that business plans aren't important, they really are, but at a key point in time where you actually need a business plan. What we found is when somebody's starting out an idea, or they don't even know quite what they're going to do, but they've got a passion about wanting to change something, or they've got a creative idea, trying to create a big business plan would be quite overwhelming, and it can distract you from doing what you're trying to do and make that idea a reality. Thorough business plans can take time, they can take money, and they take expertise to do well. You need people to help you to do these things well. And when starting out, I'll often say that creating a series of summaries or key reports that you can do in a short and sharp way, or that you can amend quickly, is a much less overwhelming way of putting a business plan together. So, one of the easy ways to get started with business planning is actually to do something we call a SWOT analysis. And often even the biggest and bulkiest business plans, when you ever get to that point, they will have a SWOT analysis or an element of that within them. And that really means what are the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities and the threats that are presented to you in trying to develop your idea, trying to develop the plan or the business or project or program, whatever it is you're looking at developing. And so I was just going to walk through an example with you here that we'll weave through into some of the other sessions as well, as we work through this little webinar. So The Leap backed an organisation or a project called Our Ball. They invested about £5,000 into a project where a local housing association partnerships and investment manager worked with his wider community to develop some really interesting initiatives. And they centred around creating a community event that did all sorts of other things. And so we'll talk about this as an example, try and bring this tool to life. So in terms of putting a SWOT analysis together for the person who created this project, they certainly had the strength of knowing about their local area and knowing about their local heritage. They had some ideas about how to reach their residents. So being able to access their local residents was a really important element in terms of a strength for them. They had interests in all sorts of different types of performance. So there were already a talent pool there, which was a real strength. Some of the weaknesses were not having the resources or the budget down to be able to plan the idea and take it forward. And initial weaknesses were around sort of how to promote this and get the word out there, perhaps. There were all sorts of opportunities, as we said, that talent pool was there. The local residents were really excited about being part of a project and a programme that was going to be meaningful to them and highlight aspects of their culture and heritage and identity, something that hadn't been done before with this particular community. And the local radio station was interested in learning more, maybe promoting what was going to happen. And there were all sorts of excitement around the idea, which really motivated the person applying to the LEAP and their community to take this idea forward. Local threats, for example, would have been whether there was similar projects or other things going on that might compete with this kind of event or activity. Threats might have been any sort of local tensions or politics or misunderstandings around what was being developed. But as things stood, there weren't too many threats around with this particular project. It got funded to around £5,000 from the LEAP and was able to move forward. But hopefully that just gives you a feel for how you might think about your own project, whether you've had some funding yet from the LEAP or whether you're looking to apply, or you're just listening to this and thinking about, how can you start to plan your way forward, really putting it in terms of what are the strengths of the idea, what are the strengths of you as the person running it, the quality of the idea and who it's going to reach, and what it's going to achieve. What are some of the weaknesses, challenges or barriers to making this thing happen? Opportunities, and those could be all sorts of things that are within or beyond your control, or things that are complementary to what you're trying to do. And threats can sometimes be, who might your competition be, what some of the challenges that are out of your control might be. There might be unknown threats as well, and listening to others and doing your SWOT analysis with other people, members of your community, members of a group that you're working with, helps add in wider ideas to strengthen your SWOT analysis. So if you try nothing else, the first quick, simple starter for 10 is having a go at a SWOT analysis. It just helps you clarify your idea and start to be able to communicate the benefits of it with others, as well as help you spot where you might need some help, where you might need some support, and then you can start to think about where you can go to access that. So moving on from that, we talk about a PESTLE analysis. So this just gives a bit more depth into what some of the risks, some of the opportunities, some of the demand for what you're doing might be. And particularly if you're going to look for funding in future, or maybe you'd like to test an idea and then try and get it commissioned in future, then understanding how your project idea links to policy needs, whether they're local policy needs or national policy needs, will be really helpful. And even if you start this practice from day one, if you build your confidence and knowledge in how to do this, it will strengthen the way you pitch an idea and communicate it to others, as well as put it down in a business plan, because any backer, investor or funder is really keen to know that you've considered the risks involved, that you've got evidence to back up why there's a need for what it is you're doing. And that's what the PESTLE analysis is all about. So this PESTLE analysis is about thinking about the project and thinking about the political landscape and what your project does and doesn't do in terms of tie into political narrative, political needs, political tension, how it might benefit a problem right now. It's looking at what the economic benefits to this are, and that might be anything from building skills in people to leveraging investment into an area to create a new venue, or to bring a new festival to an area that would boost the local area. What are the social context in terms of what's the society think about this sort of thing? Are there reports out there that back up a need for what it is you're trying to do? What are the technological needs? So some creative projects and programs might involve all sorts of technology, might develop an app or a website, they might be using different kinds of media, and it's just thinking through what are the technological risks or opportunities in terms of the idea that you're developing, and could what you develop become obsolete quite quickly, or are there technological risks in terms of the demographic or digital inclusion needs that might need to be considered before your idea could go ahead. Local needs, be lots of local needs around the areas that Bradford, Leap and Bradford and Keighley sort of Leap areas are working, as well as further afield as your projects evolve. And so understanding what the local context is, for example, Bradford 2025 is a local context incentive for arts and culture and heritage, but there'll be lots of other things. There might be to do with what your people need locally, it might be to do with local health challenges and inequalities, there might be to do with local skills shortages, but what are the risks, opportunities and demand for what you're wanting to do, and what might back that up and show you and show others there's a need for what you're trying to do. And likewise, environmental factors might come into this. You might be working around arts and environmental themes specifically, or culture and art, environmental themes specifically. So it's embedded in the nature of your project, and you can identify needs and opportunities that you want to address. But even if you're not, every project and every program and every business now would be seeking to work towards reducing the effects of climate change or reducing harmful effects on the environment. And so just thinking through, how your project and program might benefit the environment just through the way it plans what it's doing, through the way it chooses to buy things that are going to be better for the environment, maybe have less travel. Who knows? You'll know what your own context is, but the more you can deep dive into your project idea and come up with some of the risks, opportunities, and evidence to suggest why your project's needed and why the way you want to plan it, do it, and take it to your community is going to be beneficial, the more success you'll have, and the better quality of planning you'll have, because you'll have dotted the I's, crossed the T's, and thought through all the kinds of questions that a funder, an investor, or somebody from within your community might ask you in terms of, what you're doing that's a benefit and why is this needed. So we shall move on to the two-sentence business plan. So before we get into a bit more effective or complicated business planning that's a bit more thorough, we want to take the fear out of it. And we're going to move on to something called the business model canvas, but I like this as a quick two-sentence version or two or three-sentence version. And this gives you some questions to ask yourself, that if you can answer these questions, you've got your first very initial draft of a pitch or a business case for what it is you're trying to do. And so initially, there's a whole set of questions there, and I thought perhaps I would, bring this back to life for the case study that we gave a moment ago. So our ball, that event, that community event that I started to talk about, where people from a local housing association saw a need to promote culture and heritage, and knew they'd got latent talent in their community, and they wanted to apply to the LEAP and create something really distinct and unique and see where it might take them. So I'm going to use that example very loosely to demonstrate this two-sentence business plan. And so in terms of what's the problem, the community there realised, there was a lack of awareness of some of the local heritage and some of the local culture within that housing space that people were living and residing in. There were various local residents that were feeling isolated, and it was affecting their health, affecting their self-esteem potentially. And there was a lack of community-led decisions or content, activities, or community-led arts of any kind. And so those were the top three problems. What are the pain points that this community sought to do something about? It was a lack of awareness and promotion of local heritage, something to boost the local residents feeling isolated, affecting their health and their self-esteem, and their going out and meeting people, and very little sort of community involvement in decisions and creating what was going on around them. And the people that had that problem were a combination. It was the local tenants and residents themselves, whether they realise that or not, it was these things were affecting them. The local housing association is affected because, it's got people with latent skills that aren't unlocking them, aren't utilising all their talents, and, creating a healthy, happier, more engaged space. And ultimately, the arts and culture sector have this problem because if they've not got people from diverse communities feeling like the arts and culture and heritage sectors for them, particularly in a place like Bradford and Keighley, then they're not reaching everybody that they would like to reach, and the potential for arts isn't, as great as it can be. So those are some examples of who's got this problem. And then in terms of how they were going to solve this problem, the group that came together there had various ideas. They weren't necessarily products or services at the start. They were just, how might we get together and do something? What are our skills and what is our knowledge and how can we give this a go? And so what ended up happening was they created, a community-led and a community-led and community-curated cultural event, and this performance where 8 different people who practiced and decided what they were going to perform that night had their big event with over 200 people in the audience that got videoed and so on and so forth. We'll share a bit more about what came out of that in a moment, but ultimately the community came together to create a fantastic co-designed event. And some of the other problems that they were trying to solve with this is that they were going to increase participation in the arts. They were going to make much more democratic decisions about how things would get designed and put together and promoted. And one of the key things that they were going to do in solving the problems was, build a legacy by bringing the community together, build connections, create a model for events that could be perhaps run in the future, and maybe some spin-off tools and resources. And that's exactly what happened. I'm not going to walk through this box by box because you'll have your own idea really, but let's just we'll have a quick run through what these mean so you can apply it in your own context. And ultimately, with the project that we've been talking about, why should the people who have this problem buy it from you? So once the community had created this fantastic event, it was led by the community, promoted by the community, it was doing things differently in terms of the kinds of performance pieces and music and culture that it was putting out there. It was distinctly unique in terms of what it was trying to do, and there was nothing else like it. And certainly the housing association, that community, had never created something like that before. So it created a real buzz, and it really meant something to the local people. So that's why they should buy from them. Plus, they've got 8 of their local tenants and residents performing, and people were curious to see who are these people, what are their talents, can they do, what is it they're going to do, so create that level of interest. In terms of why should people buy this from you? It's about looking at unlocking that latent talent and thinking about how these things get resourced. So the next question along is, in terms of why should this person who has the problem buy it from you, and and how really are they going to go about that? It's really understanding what level of how you're going to price this thing, and what are the kinds of skills that you might need to put this together. Who are you looking for help with? What skills and talent have you already got within your group, and what skills and talent might you be looking for? And IP there, in terms of intellectual property, that means is there any intellectual property around these ideas? And certainly, as the group came to put together their event and they recorded the video, and then there were a series of books and resources that started to come out off the back of this, there were then products that became, copyright, or products that became unique, to the people who created them. And so those were new elements that they were able to sell and help build a legacy of the work that they were doing, hopefully. How you reach the customer, they did this through lots of different ways, and so they obviously were promoting the event through the ticket sales that they had. and posters and email and social media. So, you know, it's just a case, once you know what the problems are that you're trying to address and who's got this, and you can start to describe how you're going to solve this problem. What's this unique thing that you're going to bring to the community and why is it needed? And, what's different and distinct about it? You've then got your marketing um, spiel to be able to take this to the public and say, come and get involved in this. And choosing the different methods that you're going to go about, not just the methods that you can and that you know about, word of mouth. A lot of us can do that, or drop somebody an email, but maybe there's other skill sets or other places that you need to link in with, like they did here with the local radio, to promote this a bit further afield, or to promote this to where their community is going to be listening and looking for information. So it's really important to look at that. Clearly, whether you're applying to the LEAP, or whether you've had LEAP funding, or you're looking at progressing your ideas to look at the future, costing all of this out is really important. This next layer is all about money, and so really costing out what's any capital costs, what are the operations costs, the distribution costs. So they had a venue to find, they had the costs of the people were getting involved in supporting what they were doing, and how they were then going to distribute the videos and the books that then got produced after the event. These all take time and money, and while some people at the start of a project can put their time in pro bono, costing these things out is crucial in order to think about how you might sustainably do this sort of project again, or grow the project into something more than an idea. Thinking about what are your revenue streams, so that's what the income streams, and is there any margin on that? So that means, are you fully costing out and getting a full cost recovery, they call it, or are you making sure that all your costs are covered and that you're not going to make a loss? And actually, if you need to make a bit of a surplus, and it can still be a not for private profit surplus, but making some sort of margin so that you can then reinvest in the next project, or reinvest in local talent, or cover the cost of speakers or performers next time, is really important. And as well as thinking about pricing, you have to know all of these things in order to get the pricing right, so that you can not just play to what the philosophical value, local pride and having a better sense of identity and something truly unique that you really relate to, is invaluable. In terms of the value to the customer, but putting a real price on this to make sure that you're physically and competitively priced for what you're doing, is all part of doing what you need to do. Thinking about the timelines, when are you going to be doing what, all falls part of this initial two-sentence plan. And it can be very quickly, I'm kind of delving into this to help you sort of think about examples for yourself, but a timeline of what should be done by when, in its simplest form, might be all you need, in terms of week to week or month to month. By the time you've decided you've got this idea and you'd like to create that event, in the summer or by next year, you kind of get your end goal and you work your way back. And what does that timeline need to look like in order to, find the right venue, have the time to find the community and prepare and practice and perform, and then, you know, promote what it is you're going to do, and then do the thing, the performance, the event, the audio, whatever it is you're creating, and then what's beyond that even. So what are you creating after it? Are you evaluating this in some way? Are you creating some spin-off resources? You can plan all of that in. And, having a heads up on thinking what you might want to do now helps you plan it all better for the future. Well, also in this shorter business plan, this sort of two-sentence, is what are the measures of success? So this is about thinking about your goals and whether they're smart. So what are the goals, and are they, specific? Are they measurable? Are they achievable? Are they realistic? And are they time-bound? That's what that means. And so in terms of this project that they were trying to develop this event, the end goal was to create a community event that they would get lots of people in the community to come to and enjoy. and unlock local talent and showcase local culture and heritage. And they knew that they got so many people there, and that it didn't make a loss, and that a wider audience than just the housing association and the community that they live with, were going to pay attention, have some interest. That's as much as the measures of success that they had at that point in time, and that's fine. That's a starting point for them thinking, how do we know this is going to work? How will we know when we've achieved what we wanted to achieve? What were those key things be? That's all you need to kind of write down. And then action steps. This is, as we say, a marriage of a sort of business planning and a to-do list. But really, it's just to not overwhelm yourself. Once you've thought through the problem and who's got it and how you might solve it, and think about some of these other elements we've walked through, what might your first five or six things be that you need to do next to test this idea or to give it a go? Who do you need to contact? Who do you need to have come on board and help you? What skills have you got that you're happy with, but what skills have you not got, and who might you need to talk to help you with that? You'll know what your next steps are, but once you've thought it through, you can then bullet point those down, and then you can make a start. And there's not been 25 sides of A4 that you've had to write or type or put into a computer. You've just got a bit of a plan together, and you can perhaps start to talk to somebody at the Leap. You can start to talk to somebody in your community about your ideas and how you want to take them forward, and make your ideas a reality quite simply. So that's the 2-sentence business plan, and just think it through and take it forward. Now, for those of you who want to go a little bit further, maybe you've been running your project for a little while, or maybe you've been needing to write some funding bids or get plans in place to kind of grow what you're doing. There's something called a business model canvas. The idea is, again, it's a quick, short, sharp glance at what it is you need to do. It should be easy to understand and quite customer focused. So out in the community, think of our community, people who might benefit from what we're doing. But it focuses, it encourages you to think about the value and benefit that you're going to bring to customers and beneficiaries. It starts to show connections as to how the different elements of what you're trying to do relate to one another. And it should start to describe how you're going to create, deliver, and capture the value or the benefit of what you're doing. So let's dive in and have a look at building on that 2-sentence business plan and showing you this business model canvas. So it's a tool that people have used a lot, and it's a mechanism that helps you try to show what the business model is. So initially, when you just develop an idea, it's just that. It's an idea, it might happen, it might work, and you test it out. And organisations like the Leap, with their financial and non-financial support, can really help you pilot and give things a go. But over time, if you want to build on your project idea and grow it into something sustainable, something annual, something that might even be a company that generates profits and creates opportunities and roles and jobs for others, then this business planning, can be really important. And having a business model where something generates some sort of profits or surplus to cover its costs is going to be key. As we said before, people can get a little bit lost in writing a business plan, and they're busy writing the thing without thinking about how it's really going to be delivered, how it might be effective, and how the different elements of what you're trying to do hang together and function, to make it all work, and to spot what you're going to be wanting to do and what you might need to delegate or find other people to help you with. So it can help with that. And yes, as we say, the business model canvas, it helps with lots of these things and more. And it's just should be, it's a simple one-pager that just at a glance gives you a way of summing up and communicating your business model and your plans. So it's another simple sheet, and it just builds on what we just talked about. So I'm going to walk through these boxes because it's, what does that mean when you're looking at it on the screen? But in a second, I'll show you this case study we've been talking about, where Arbwell created a community event. Over 200 people attended, and lots of different things happened as a result. I'm just going to walk through that scenario, not exactly how it played out for them, but for the purposes of this business model canvas, it should start to put things into context and build on. So let me show you it with an example. And we're going to start with and it's like, where do you start with this? And it doesn't matter where you start. So any of these boxes, I'm just going to flip back. Any of these boxes, it doesn't really matter where you start. You start with what makes best sense to you. So you probably know one of two things. You might know who's going to benefit from what you're doing, or who's going to who the beneficiaries or customers might be, or what you think you might want to do. So most people, when they do this kind of activity, they might start with who are the beneficiaries. They might start with some of the key activities. You just start to jot down and bullet point your thinking and your ideas. So I'm going to start in the box that says segments, because that's the people involved. Who are the beneficiaries and the customers? And the people they knew is their tenants and residents from a local housing association, and they're the initial people who are going to benefit from this. And ultimately, in addition to those people with the ideas and the people who might help support to make it happen, there are local arts and culture organisations who are going to benefit from this. And then local families, young people, and wider diverse communities are going to benefit from this. But what's the this? So the this, as we know, was they knew they wanted to create, creative events or creative and cultural events, and they knew that would be a ticketed performance, and that they imagined there might be books and other publications, and that if they started to video this and video elements of the performers, they would have a way of creating something that might become a service or a product in future. Or we're suggesting that could be the case. Initially, when somebody comes with an idea, they just come with an idea. They just want to run an event and get a few people together. But by the time they've done it once, you can start to pull apart the elements of what happened. And as I say, in this case, they're in future, as a part of their business model canvas, they can now run creative and cultural events, all sorts of ticketed performances. They know they can create books and publications, and they've now got a video channel to be able to share stuff. So that's where the interventions start. And then it's a case of thinking, well, if that's the products and services, and we understand some of the beneficiaries here, sometimes it takes a little while to step back and think, who are the customers? So I'm jumping back into the segments box, because we now know that we've run these events and performances, and we've got these other resources. And yes, they are of interest to the tenants and residents and the housing associations, and they may buy and purchase tickets, or they might purchase the books and the other things. But over time, other arts and cultural organisations may want to commission them to repeat this or to do this sort of work again, or wider housing associations in other parts of the country might want them to. And ultimately, once they've created a whole set of showcasing with videos and books and bringing different types of community arts and music and spoken word and different things that get performed at these events to life, then the wider general public, the family members of these people, family members overseas, and fans generally that start to follow some of this work are potential customers. And so this is about who's going to pay for these things in future. And it just helps to start to piece together where might the business model sit. So there's some types of interventions, there's some beneficiaries of this work and the activities that are going on, and there's some potential customers now in the future. So we start to piece a bit of a business model together. But we're going to just head across to key activities. So when we know what the key interventions are, these events, the books, the videos, and so on, just piecing back what are the key activities that make these things happen. Because there might be other business aspects and other things to charge for in there. So ultimately, they've co-designed and facilitated all sorts of sessions, They've planned events and performances, and that's something they can repeat again, whether that's part of a learning and development programme or a cultural and community development programme, skills building, work and skills programmes. There's key activities they're running there that are attractive to youth organisations, to councils, to other types of bodies that have budgets to see these sorts of things happen. There's been all sorts of creative planning and practice sessions. So they haven't just got grouped together and designed some ideas. They've spent weeks supporting those artists to practice. And that takes time, takes space, and it needs to be factored into the costs of what are going on. So that's why that's in there as another key activity that enable this thing to happen. There's event promotion and event management, and those are sellable skills and sellable activities. There's publishing of audio-visual, content, different types of media, and that again, there are prices or costings to be put around that. And other key activities that have happened are, they've had to travel around, there might have been speakers and performers involved, and again, those are services that could be brokered, but there are also services that need to be paid for potentially in future or need to be factored in. If people are going to give their time voluntarily and will support this project, if there isn't a budget, what's the expectation? So that's why those are all sitting there. That then helps us move across to what are the key resources needed to make these events and these things happen and produce these items that then get sold. So just as some examples, clearly there's room or venue hire, there's room hire to plan and coordinate the space, unless that can be found in kind. There's the venues, to do the larger performance. There's refreshments that they may sell on at an event, or just refreshments generally, depending on how the event plays out. They're going to need to record things, so they might need to pay for or bring in some students or whatever it is, but recording the shows, the performances, some marketing materials to showcase before and after, to help promote what they want to then showcase and sell on beyond the events. Takes time and money. There's a distribution cost, so let's say people have bought books or other items, merchandise and whatever may follow. There's packaging and postage and getting this stuff out to people. And as we said before, other key resources are that travel speakers. So it's having to think, what resources will you need, and what might you need to access to make this happen. So thinking through your project really clearly and thinking about the idea and the intervention. What is it you're going to do? What are the key activities that make that happen? And what are the resources you need? All help build a picture for, is this a viable sort of business case, and what will somebody need to do to help you support to develop this further? In addition to the cash resources that you might need, or the investment or money or funding to take an idea forward in future and make sure you've got your costs covered to plan further, to test more, to do more. There's other partners and stakeholders, as we call them, people who've got a vested interest in what you're doing, to consider. It says, who are the essential groups that need to involve to deliver this, and are there any special accesses or permissions? These are the things to think about. So they know they need their community because they want to engage their community to develop these performance pieces and ideas and unlock history and heritage. In this case, the key partner was housing associations, and they work with one, and potentially it's a model to work with others. But they're probably a broader partners if they sit and think, where else might we want to take this? Clearly, there are media partners that they need, both to promote what they're doing, to showcase what they're doing, and to help edit, record and edit what's being circulated as audio-visual materials. The theatres or venues and community centres are partners, depending on the performances, the events, and what they're doing. And longer term, different kinds of commissioners would be partners. These might be arts and cultural heritage regeneration, there might be health and wellbeing, skills development commissioners, commissioners supporting young people's, development. The world's your oyster, really. It's just a case of thinking it through and thinking, in terms of the model that you've developed and this project that you piloted, where could it go next? And so we're just throwing some ideas down here as to kind of the key partners and stakeholders in this particular case, but they may well be relevant to you along with lots of others. Additionally, when you're thinking about these different elements, we thought about the activities, resources, and partners that we need. And that's all on this left-hand side. To the right-hand side, well, I'm going to jump back and think about who's benefiting here, because you've got this sort of balance between the resources and the activities, and then who's benefiting, what's the benefit, and as they call it, what's the value proposition or the social value proposition. And we're just going to jump back and focus on that a little bit. And you can jump around this. This is what's the beauty. If you start to try and write a business plan, you can get very stuck by page 3 or by section 5, thinking, oh, I'm not sure I know how to do this or to fill this bit in. The beauty of a business model canvas is it's sitting there and you can bullet point down it and come back to it or add to it as you learn or as you know that little bit more, or you've got that element a little bit better understood. And so jumping back across to these sort of segments and value proposition, we said right from the start, we knew tenants and residents were a key beneficiary. They were the priority because it was their ideas and it was them who were going to pull this together. The housing association beneficiary, and then building on from there, realising that local arts and cultural organisations and other people locally may be benefiting from what they're doing. But as we've now discussed, the different elements that they were creating, the events, the resources, and so on, we realise there's a much wider customer base and people who might pay for certain aspects of what they were creating. And so, in order to be able to better communicate to the tenants, residents, the future customers, and maybe future partners, we've just been talking about these partners and stakeholders, in order to bring other housing associations or theatres or commissioners on board, what we're going to tell them, what's the message, how we convince them that they want to get behind our model, our business model, our project to take this thing forward. And so in this case that we've been talking about, in terms of what's the social value proposition from this, I've suggested here, if they're all about promoting heritage, unlocking new talent, they want to reduce isolation, improve well-being, increase community connections and pride, then we've got the solutions for you. And so it's showcasing, and thinking through what were the key elements of value that really happened. And in order to find, I've just recognise that these are some of the things that have happened, and it's almost putting it in a language in some buzzwords sometimes that a funder, an investor, or someone you're sort of pitching an idea to will understand or have, their ears will prick up. But really, if you need to find this stuff out, you've just got to ask the people. So those people that came to your events and those people who performed and those families and those other people who came to enjoy, what took place, all you have to ask them is, what do they enjoy most? What do they value about what they just saw? You ask them, you do some evaluation work about, the impact of what you've been doing, and that's how you start to find out what's gone on. And I only know this because I do lots of this work, and so I can quickly guess that the value proposition for this kind of project is all about, as I say, promoting heritage, unlocking talent, building skills, reducing isolation, improving well-being, and boosting that community connection and pride. And then in terms of some of the impact measures, how do we know these things are happening? Perhaps there's increased awareness of certain types of arts and culture or certain types of community needs or strengths. Clearly, the numbers of people engaged, so the numbers of people who turned up, they had 200 people come to this event, they had 8 different people perform on the night, they've had, hundreds of views of videos, so, these are these are measurements that we've been able to see, things that have taken place that prove what happened was a benefit. So you can go to your next customer and say, we know that as a result of this event, these things increased. You were able to engage these sorts of people who hadn't come to this sort of event before. The people who got involved, so let's say those 8 performers, maybe some of them hadn't, been out in a while. Maybe they've been, performing in their bedroom or not picked up an instrument in 10 years, and they're now doing this amazing performance. So, health improvement, skills development, and so on will be a big part of this project. The sales of tickets and the resources that you were able to secure are evidence that this has happened, and you might then be able to match fund that or build on that with key partners and stakeholders who want to see more of this happen. And ultimately, you can't buy community pride. And so understanding the level to which that's boosted community pride and community a sense of identity and built relationships will be really important. And then lastly, there's an additional one here, what do the customers want to get out of this initiative? And not quite, there might be increased skills, there might be just have more fun in their lives. It's quite simply, if you've had 200 people come and say it was fun, we had a good time, that's great, and that gives everybody a boost. But I think if you can also see to what extent people have increased their skills or their knowledge, or they're now aware of more art, more diverse arts, music, and media, that there's a sense of, as we just said, pride and identity, and innovative and new ways of creating community-led arts initiatives and bringing much more wider audiences into venues or onto radio, then you've got all sorts of outcomes there that, your partners and your funders and other people will be really, really pleased to see. And you can evidence that you've done it. So your business model canvas, tells that story with you and makes it quick and simple for you to do that. Complemented by those other things that we said, the SWOT analysis, the PESTLE, but this just gives you the guiding sort of points to be able to really help people understand what's the model and how are people benefiting. So we've talked about activities and what you're physically delivering. We've alluded to the channels and the methods there. So clearly the channels are when they're running these things, how are you reaching, they're reaching people through, local and community theatre, through YouTube, local radio, the housing associations and the planning and the preparation and all the work that went on there to make these things happen. And we know who's benefiting and how. What we just then come back to on the last layer, which is often what people leave to the end, is the finances. And I would say the finances are what you should start with, really. But in a business model canvas, you start with what you know and what you understand. And it may be that the finances are the key thing. You've got this amount of money from the leap. You've already put down your budget for what it's for, and you're then working through how you make this project happen. Just touching on those finances, there's different elements that we break that down into. So let's talk about income and expenditure. Really, it talks about cost structure is basically, what's your biggest expenditure and how might that expenditure change over time is what, your cost structure. How are you making sure that you've got enough money to cover the costs of what you're doing? And do you understand what all of your costs are? And then if you were to repeat this, or you did it at a different time of year, or you did it with different people, or you did it with different partners or different venues, would things change? Is basically what that means. The revenue aspect is, how are you making your money? Where's the income coming from? And so ticket sales, refreshment sales, book publications, and then in time, program commissions, as you start to expand, distribution fees, YouTube advertising potentially if they've got lots of hits on YouTube for the different talent and performers that they're showcasing. I've just given some examples there, and we've already talked through what some of the costs to run this sort of project are. What you're then aiming for, really, in terms of a business model, is some sort of surplus. Whether you're a not-for-profit organisation, you're setting up eventually as some sort of not for private profit, legal structure. We've got a session on legal structure you can listen to. You want to make sure that there's some level of surplus to then reinvest back in the community, in paying for things, and whatever it might need to be. And so in this case, we're suggesting that, where this project grows and where it starts to not just cover its room hire, its refreshments, its recording, its services, it's covering its facilitation time, and marketing, promotion, and packaging and distribution, all those things that we said are the costs. If and when it makes that surplus, it can then reinvest its profits in subsidising tickets so that they're free to certain parts of the community that might not have the money to pay for tickets. It can use that surplus to design programs to talent scout and support upcoming talent and invest in those performers that are coming through, and maybe take them on a roadshow, or once there's that surplus, you've got options and you've got choices, and the business model evolves and it grows and becomes that viable organisation that can have a life of its own. So hopefully it's giving you a flavour, a slightly more in-depth way. We've given the SWOT analysis, we've given that 2-sentence, and then we've given this business model canvas in more depth. It's really just a case of choosing which one is going to work for you, and sitting with those templates and having a look through and making a start. So, really think it through. Think about the stage that you're at, and before you start writing things down and preparing to communicate what you're coming up with, who's the audience? Who's the audience of what you're trying to write, what you're trying to piece together? Who's the reader or the recipient of this information? Use templates that are going to help get you started, that we've just described, and I would always say don't labour over it, don't get lost in it. Bullet point it down. The sooner you get it down, the sooner you can test it and see if it works. The elite are backing people to test these ideas, and sometimes people say fail fast so that you can adapt your idea and improve your idea, and that's what it's all about. Start, if you're going to start anywhere, start with that problem solving. So what does the community really need? What are the issues happening in the community right now? There's a webinar all about problem solving in your community. Start with the problem solving and think about what's the real sticky problems and how are you going to address those problems? What are those pain points? And then the numbers. What is it going to cost in terms of your time or energy or resources or actual cash or pro bono support to make this thing happen? And then building on from there, what's it going to take to repeat it and to evolve it, to turn it into a model like we just described? And as we say, when it comes to business planning, having it as a short series of reports and sections means that you can update different elements of this thing easily. We have templates, and the LEAP and other LEAP partners will have templates that you can look at for more traditional business plans, executive summary, and then all the elements of that business plan, from products and services and pricing and all sorts of other elements. But keeping it into sections about how you're going to do what you do just helps keep it alive and keep it less overwhelming and keep it updatable. So in summary, consider which one's going to work for you. See what you're doing as a live working document and use it and implement those plans and refresh the information based on what you find and what you learn, whether that's a SWOT analysis that you update because you found something out and there's a new opportunity, or there's something that you found out as a bit of a threat or a weakness that you need to address, or whether it's the business model canvas and you've worked out a new piece of the puzzle. And then once you have this information, you can use it to start to communicate more effectively with others and with conviction. You're not just guessing at what you've done. You've done it, you've tested it, and you've reviewed it, and you've now got some plans for how you're going to grow it, repeat it, do it again, or do it better. And all of these pieces of information then help with planning operations and how you're going to run things next time. They can help with pitching, different opportunities for resources and support that you might need. They can help you market and communicate what you're doing next time and evidence that impact. And ultimately, help you understand what's financially viable. There will be sessions coming up on budgeting and looking at cash flow, but even just keeping together your cost structure and what your income and expenditure and what those resources and revenue are going to need to be as part of planning, even if you've not done it yet, all helps you think through, is this going to work? What additional help do I need? Where do I know I can get some pro bono free stuff and some help? And where do I know we've really got to find some resources to cover these costs? So I hope you take away these tools and resources and put them into practice. You can rely on colleagues at the LEAP, some of the community development managers there, or your local partners in communities supporting with some of the creative place work to further these ideas. And we really hope that you'll take the leap and take your ideas forward. Thanks for listening.